everyone, and welcome to the China EVs and More podcast, where my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners and viewers, welcome back. We ask that you please smash that subscribe and like button so that you don't miss anything from us in the future. Better yet, help us get the word out about this podcast to others that you think would enjoy and appreciate our downloads. My name is Tu Li. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we use to cover many topics. You can find it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which, of course, I encourage you all to do. Lei, it's been a while, buddy. What's going on, man? I see that you have a nice jacket on. Can you please introduce yourself?
Go Detroit, right? Yes, good morning from my side. This is your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode 223. And this is a National Day holiday break, Mid-Autumn Festival.
Yeah, that's right.
Your Detroit Tigers are still in the playoffs while my Red Sox are done. Special episode. I'm kind of pissed, but I'm back stateside. I just got back early this morning, actually, and I feel like half of me is still in China. But trying to get used to, the slow pace of life.
Was it cold or was it still pretty warm in Beijing?
Oh, it's still summer. It's getting cold.
Okay.
But yeah.
In Michigan, last couple of days it's been more chilly, but it was colder in Munich than it was in Michigan when I landed back. When I landed back in Michigan on Saturday, it was 80 degrees. So anyway.
Yeah, it's actually been pretty warm. Actually, it's going to heat up this side of the world. But September sales, should we unpack a little bit of that?
Okay. So the 800-pound gorilla is now getting a little bit beat up.
Well, the thing that stood out was for the first time in a long time, their year-on-year sales were down. I don't think it's panic mode yet, but they're still almost 400,000 units a month. But it's just much harder to get bigger and higher. That's the message, right?
And we're seeing that the export numbers are key for them to continue to grow because of the intensity of the price war domestically. And I don't know how much lower they can go, number one. Number two, the government is really, really paying attention to any significant price cuts, probably through the end of this year and beginning of next. So companies are going to have to get creative if they want to take sales away from BYD and some of the larger players.
Yeah, and if we look at the numbers, I think they're going to get close to 1 million units sold overseas out of, I expect 4.5 million, 4.6. That was a number that was kind of reported earlier. And that's a significant share, right? 1 out of 4.5 is, 20-some%, right? Which means they're
and now they have the ships to do it.
Yeah, which means their domestic sales are probably down, or flat. I think that's one concerning factor. And then add on top of that the recent initiatives or actions on the 60-day payment, which I think nobody knows who is actually following suit. I think that's adding some pressure. And And one number I saw of how competitive it is in the market is that August and September, there were about 150 models. Now that includes new models, that includes different variations, iterations of existing models, that includes ICE models that were launched during that time. Talk about a golden September. And we saw the records, right? It's
Oh,
8 to
let
10
me
had record sales.
so let me just really quickly, year over year for XPeng, 95% plus 95%, NIO plus 64%, Leapmotor plus 97, Geely Group plus 81, Huawei HEMA plus 32.5, Great Wall plus 52.5, Li Auto down 37%, and BYD down 11.4%. So some are feasting, some are not feasting. Li Auto just needs a hug.
Yeah.
They were looking at 700,000 units, or Chabuduo around 700,000 units. They might not hit that number now.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the L series. It almost feels like when you're. I'm back in China. Everything is about the I series these days. Nobody talks about the L series really because they have to focus on delivering the i6, which has gotten quite good reception. And again, for all of these players, what it comes down to is all your area of expertise, which is the manufacturing and supply chain game. And they're racing to kind of produce as much, sell as much as they can produce, while at the same time looking over to 2026 when the purchase tax exemption is halved. They got to think about, how much that drop in Q1 is going to be. So I think there's going to be a balancing game going toward the end of the year.
And remember, you brought up the supply chain thing. So with all these companies that I just mentioned, XPeng, NIO, Leapmotor, their utilization rates at the factory are much higher than they were a year ago, than they were a few months ago. So this inches them towards profitability. Okay. The key would be that they're not pricing their products under what the costs are. I don't think I haven't heard any Chinese EV company doing that yet, but does this mean 2026 is a banner year for some of these EV companies? Only if the weaker players leave the market and they're able to stabilize pricing across their products.
Speaking of one big company on watch is Leapmotor, because they're going to double their sales this year. And their plan is to double again in 2026 to 1 million. That's their plan. I think that's openly.
And this is going to be at the expense of BYD.
Yeah. And I recently visited Leapmotor and talked to some of their people, and they still have 2 products in the A series, the lower segment, and 3 products in the D series. They have a D19 coming, which is the 6-seat 3-row SUV. Those are coming in 2026, plus on top of the C and the B. And if they do so, I think that's pretty impressive. And I've heard people from NIO even saying that's quite impressive from a manufacturing point of view that they can do this.
And they're going to generate licensing revenue from Stellantis.
And then plus export, right? They're selling into more markets outside of China.
With the help of Stellantis.
Their cost discipline is quite good, I think, compared to the ones that are still trying to break even. I think they were profitable in the first half of 2025. So they're the kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the smart EV startup space, I'd say, for now.
Well, also, they are only one brand, and they are primarily in the mass market, so sub $30,000 US price point. And so, Chery also is doing quite well. They IPO'd. We can talk about that in a second,
Yeah.
but you finish your thought.
No, so the Leapmotor is gonna be another player, and it has been a player that has eat into BYD's market share. And they're gonna launch their A series, which is kind of the Dolphin type of segment, and then the larger SUVs. They have an MPV coming. They're gonna cover almost every segment next year. With
Not only
E-Rev
every segment, Lei, but they also, E-Rev and BEV.
Yeah.
So
in tandem, right? So they're probably the one to watch next year. And then you have this flip flop, right? NIO, XPeng, they're flying high. The Auto is kind of in a funk a bit, but and what they had to do with the i6, right? It's essentially priced lower than the E-Rev, which is usually shouldn't be the case because the E-Revs are usually a little bit cheaper than the BEVs. That's kind of the state where you launch a new model and you want it to be successful, and then at the expense of possibly these. I mean, the 2025 L series were just launched just a few months ago, and they feel old because of this new I series that are.
And what was a virtue a year ago, 18 months ago, is now quite a burden because XPeng, BYD are growing their export, which is really, helping pad some of the sales numbers, while Li Auto, focusing on the domestic market, has no other alternative except to double down into the China market because they're still not ready yet to export.
So Li Auto, they're beefing up their international sales team. And a mutual friend, I don't know, I'm not going to mention the name, but she just moved from XPeng to Li Auto for international sales marketing. So I told her it's kind of the right time to switch because Li Auto is in need. And there's a lot of lessons to be drawn from what XPeng has done that Li Auto can learn, especially in Europe. But yeah.
What and maybe they can hire us, but I would be very deliberate on which vehicles I want to export first because there's so many between the L series that it doesn't make sense to export them all. I would lean into one or two of those products and then maybe the i6 because the European market, they're not going to take the L9. There's not many countries that are going to take that size vehicle. And, the family orientation that Li Auto positions itself in China, how much is that going to resonate with European customers? I'm not sure yet. So like having that refrigerator in the back seat, having, the IE sit in the third row, is that all going to really matter in Europe? So they have to be really careful if they want to hit the ground running and not take those mulligans like XPeng and BYD did and reset international teams and things like that. So
yeah, I think it's going to be methodical that the Auto and strategic where they enter first. Maybe not Europe, maybe
Well, they're entering the Middle East, aren't they?
Middle East, sure,
first.
Sure, Middle East.
Yeah,
that's the primary target. And then I think some of we're also seeing some momentum. The Buick Electra L7 launch was quite well received. I got to check out the Audi E5 Sportback. It's I'm telling you, it's
hi.
It's pretty good. The way you sit in it and the vibe, it's definitely a Chinese smart EV.
So, but here's the challenge though, Lei. Is it an Audi branded vehicle? Because does it make sense for them to have the four rings in the rest of the world and then have Audi AUDI in China? Is that the strategy? Or because that's what's going to be confusing a little bit, I think.
I really don't know what makes sense, but I think it's a move that they had to do. It's a bet. It's a bet. And just like Volkswagen, depending on XPeng on the CA platform, all of their branded vehicles in China, it's a bet. And if it works out, great. If not, I'm not sure, their survivability, that probably will tank. But if it works, I think the bet will pay off. Is that something we'll see next year?
Let's emphasize for the viewers and listeners, because some of them are obviously new to China EVs and more. And we welcome all new listeners, by the way. Let's emphasize how much of a government vehicle brand a lot of young people in China think the Audi 4-ring brand is. And you tell a story, but let me tell my story first. When I first moved to Beijing, there were A6s and A8s all over the place in Beijing. And they were driven. There's drivers and there's people sitting in the back. And it was pretty much a government official car. There were military plates on them. There were diplomatic plates on them. It was basically a government car. And the kids that grew up in the early 2000s to the mid 2010s, they are now at buying age. What they remember as well is that government officials were being carted around in these A6s and A8s. And so that is why Audi had to rebrand itself in China. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Lei.
Well, I think, at this moment, at least from the younger consumers, the post-90s and the teens, I think we've passed that kind of the Audi image official vehicle. And if you look at these recent launches by either Buick, not to mention the Chinese smart EV startups themselves, look what type of brand ambassadors they bring on when they launch these vehicles. Look at who Li Auto brought for the i6. The guy's name's Yang Qianxi. He's one of the most popular young actors in China. Zheng Qingwen, right, the Audi ambassador, she's the top tennis player from China, women's tennis player. The Buick brought a similar young actor. These are ways and tactics that they're showing that we're changing our image, right? I think Buick, especially for the Electra, similar to Audi, is completely gone from what we felt Buick was in the early days, or even in the 2010s. It's completely different.
And since we're talking about legacy brands, Lei, I'll mention the company on your left chest there launched the Bronco E-Rev this week in China. So Ford launched the Bronco, which is not going to be sold in the United States, unfortunately, for those that are wondering.
And I think Ford and GM, I think they're at least they're getting some help, because in the US side, because of the emissions and these long-term policies and regulations, that they don't have to be that strict in meeting certain targets. Somehow, I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but they're also, right, these US American brands are also trying different things in China to be relevant, like the Germans.
I think it's great. I think they have to.
You have to do it, right, to compete.
And again, this is to the benefit of the Chinese consumer.
And Ford recently unified their sales channel into one Ford, combining the JMC and the Chang'an Ford. So that's another.
Well, they weren't selling enough volume to really have multi-channel strategy. So, And let's mention that JMC is helping on the Bronco side, on the SUV side, for Ford, and Chang'an is helping on the commercial side, I want to say. But oh man, so let's talk Chery IPO.
Yeah. I can start, or you want to start?
Go
Chery.
ahead.
No, I think Chery, just to give a
Let's give a little history lesson first, because I want to hear about this history lesson.
First of all, the chairman, the president in Tong Yao, I think he's the longest serving CEO of a Chinese automaker. Other than him, the only other two that I can think of are Wang Chuanfu of BYD and Jack Wei of Great Wall Motor. Maybe we can put Li Shufu in there, but he's kind of the chairman. He's not the CEO role anymore. That's number one. And second, Chery is nicknamed. They started it from this little 小草房, which means the little hut, the little grass hut in a city, Wuhu, which is like tier 4 or 5 city. Yeah. And so that kind of historical perspective makes this IPO very, because it's a long path. And now Chairman In, I mean, he's all white hair. I mean, we can call him Grandpa In, right? Because he's been at this since 97, so almost 30 years. For him to finally IPO, I think the industry looks at it as finally getting over that hump, right? That's kind of the historical perspective. And then the other one is that Chery is the biggest exporter, bar none. ICEs, very important, ICEs. They sell half of their vehicles outside of China, pretty much.
More than half, 53%.
Yeah, maybe more than half. They sold 2 million vehicles in the first 9 months, I think. And I believe, roughly half are exported to the rest of the world. And I think in terms of growth, they claim to be, in 2024, their passenger vehicle sales grew 49.4%. They're claiming to be, that's the fastest growth among the top 20 passenger vehicle makers in the world. And they're number one exporting ICEs. They're number one growth in NEVs, I think. And they've been, get this, since 2003, they've been the top Chinese independent passenger vehicle brand exporter. Top for 22 years in a row. So just some of the significance behind the IPO. Yeah.
So let's just summarize some of the brands, and you fill in the blanks, the ones that I'm missing. They have Chery, they have Jaecoo, they have Omoda, they have Jetour, iCar, Exceed,
Luxeed.
Luxeed. And let me throw a little bit of a wet blanket on those numbers, because as they IPO'd in Hong Kong, there's some regulations that they needed to adhere to, meaning if they continue to export to Russia, one of their largest markets, the two largest markets are Mexico and Russia. They export mostly ICEs into Russia. Almost 25% of their sales volume goes to Russia. So that 49% year-over-year growth that you were talking about, a lot of those cars ship to Russia. They said prior to their IPO that they're exiting the Russia market. So that's a big chunk of sales that they said they're going to walk away from. Okay. And so let's see which markets they try to push into to make up for that. Because in Mexico, the tariff is likely going to double from 25 to 50%. Okay. And there isn't as much competition in Russia And so the street was very optimistic. The share price popped, but it's actually a little bit concerning to me because they ship 50% or over 50% of their vehicles abroad with the protectionism going up. But the other thing that was really, really impressive that I didn't realize is that they build, either manufacture or ship kits to 6 or 7 markets already. So they're the envy of a lot of companies because they're pretty diverse with a manufacturing footprint outside of China that's right now better than BYD's.
Yeah. I kind of dropped into their Jaecoo Omoda. There was a press conference at Munich, and some of the numbers they showed were quite impressive of launching into Europe and the German market. And some of those models are already produced in Spain, right, with their partner. So that's I think European region in general, regardless of the tariffs, will be a major region to push. And they're launching the regular hybrids. I forget the term. I think it's called the some hybrid. It could be super hybrid or something. And some of those are already produced in Spain, which they have to have the right products. And it's not just necessarily bringing the same models from China, right? We talked about earlier in the show, which have helped them succeed relatively. But yeah, I mean, Russia, that's kind of a question mark. And then 50%, it's a double-edged sword, right? Double-edged, it's both good and bad. But I think they're one of the ones that are also growing significantly among the ones that we talked about.
So companies like Chery, companies like Leapmotor, companies like BYD that are built on manufacturing and launching affordable vehicles, the world is their oyster because that lends well to Africa, that lends well to Southeast Asia, that lends well to Latin America. And the legacy automakers, their strategy for those markets historically has just been to decontent. Okay? So could you imagine now having to compete in Mexico against a fairly fully featured seagull or a seal? If you're a legacy automaker, you better step it up. And when we look at Chery, BYD's constraint is we only ship PHEVs and BEVs. Chery still ships ICEs. And for the foreseeable future, Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, these same regions, India, are really going to still purchase ICEs, due to the constraints in capital or ability to invest in infrastructure, ability to invest in the grid as more and more clean energy vehicles enter those markets. The constraint is not going to be volume from the Chinese. The constraint is going to be how many can take it, how many can plug into the grid without it exploding or being overburdened. So I think that's kind of also the interesting part, because if you look at GM, 70% of their exports are shipped to China, to Mexico. And so that could really do some damage to GM outside the very few markets that they still sell in volume. It could do some damage to them. So,
and then just to add, I mean, their official Chery IPO release, they actually gave out a breakdown of the capital raise, how they plan to use it. So 35% are for R&D of different models for passenger vehicles, so the product mix. 25% for the next generation tech R&D. 20% for overseas. 10% for production in Wuhu. And 10% for the operating capital use. So that's kind of a summary of their IPO capital raised.
I think Chery is well positioned. Again, they have to be careful though, because China is.
Well,
They need to really lean into China and be competitive there. They can't become an export only company, and that's the current trajectory. Unfortunately, that's the only risk that I see.
They're so global that the last couple of years, I'm sure you remember this as well, that they've brought a high speed rail worth of their international media and dealer partners, where they have this global partner conference. I think they've done this the past couple of years. So
Didn't they fly 747 worth of people from in for Shanghai in 23?
They might have. I'm not sure, but I know for a fact that they brought like a train's worth of dealer partners to Wuhu.
And here's the reality as well, Lei, that the foreign markets that specifically a Chery, a BYD, a Geely, and a Leapmotor play in, they will export that price war. They will export that price war. Let me repeat that. And so the legacy automakers that have significant share in their domestic markets, whether it's Spain, Italy, some of the Southern European countries that still have a strong foreign presence, Peugeot, Renault, those types of companies, you better sharpen your pencil and you better bring great products, because Leapmotor, BYD, the collective, not just one brand, but the collective will take your share.
And those shares have been growing in Europe, despite the tariffs, right? So it's not going to really put a huge wall, unlike the U.S.
I do have to step back, reflect a bit. In the early 2010s, when I would see Chery vehicles, they were absolute pieces of POSs. So BYD and Chery within a 12-year period have improved so much. It's impressive, man, because if we look at Ford and some of the legacy automakers, their warranty costs are really, really weighing them down. And you look at the opposite, where Chery and BYD have just made leaps and bounds on the quality, reliability, design, fit and finish of these cars in just a 10-year period. I don't know. That's what makes it so difficult for the legacies to really keep up.
And then the keeping part of it is not just time to market. The keeping part of it is time to pivot, time to decision making, which I personally feel, I'm sure you do, every time I go back, it feels like a new ballgame. That something has changed. Whether it be Li Auto, let's say, launching the i6. First of all, it was an online launch. There was no pre-sale. It was just launched. Delivery started. These tactics, they change fast. And if you don't pay attention, you run into using some of the old, outdated tactics, which no longer work in China. I think that's the difficult thing. I think the time to market,
we should remind people. We should remind people that Li Auto was an EREV company until the L8 and L6, or i8 and i6. So they have increased complexity of their manufacturing by orders of magnitude, not like incrementally. They are completely changing parts of their manufacturing to accommodate the i6 and the i8, and they're still being so the L series, a lot of them are being built in Lanzhou. Is it Lanzhou?
Lanzhou.
And then they do also have a factory in Beijing. So those two locations are building There are e-revs, and then in Beijing, they're building the battery electric vehicles. So Beijing is becoming an important manufacturing location for China because Xiaomi is also building there as well.
Yeah, Xiaomi, I mean, they had a huge step up in September. It was 30,000 in August, and then boom, like 40,000 in September. I mean, that's behind that is really manufacturing that you just mentioned.
And I think they could have shipped more. I mean, demand wise, I don't think it's demand challenge.
No.
I think they're trying to ramp, but responsibly, because I don't think they want quality issues to creep up, but they should be able to get to 50,000 units by the end of this year, I would think, pretty easily.
And we're actually, speaking of, right, we talk about NIO a little bit. NIO, they should be able to get to 50,000 units from what it looks now. They're at 35,000 roughly. I'm sure. I mean, I was
L60's continuing to build momentum.
Yeah, so. I was at F2 just a couple of weeks ago, or not last week, but last week. Yeah, maybe the week before. I'm bad with timing, but the latest visit, I mean, the assembly lines were quite humming because they're building the L60s in F2, the L90 in F1, and the new ESA in F3. So, I mean, they can, capacity-wise, they shouldn't have a problem. It's just a matter of, again, getting to break even, getting to those sales targets, and then how do you maintain? I mean, for a company like Leapmotor, they can double next year. Oh, sure, okay, but for NIO, what happens next year? How do you keep that momentum? That to me, that's. I think this year, the picture is pretty clear with 3 months ago, but
Lei, I think we've also, and I think you would agree with this. I think they've also reached a limit on how fast they can iterate. I don't know how much faster. I don't know if the consumer wants changes, more than or as.
Even, I mean, the Qin Hong, he admitted that the 2025 newer versions of the 5566 are not selling as expected. Okay, and those were just renewed right before the summer. So that's a kind of a condition. I don't know what kind of a you will call that. It's you do that and then it falls under expectations, and then what do you do? Again, you iterate again.
Well, I should mention I was in Munich last week and celebrated Oktoberfest with my wife, so that was really fun. And then I spent a couple of days.
Did you put on the attire, the whole attire, or no?
No, I didn't buy one, man. I was supposed to go with a few mutual friends, a few of our mutual German friends, but
so
they
you
couldn't
got
join.
To see
so my wife.
What the Oktoberfest is all about?
I was blown away. I actually was kind of cynical. I thought it was just going to be a bunch of drunk Germans, but like everybody's wearing lederhosen, a lot of American English being spoken. So they're either Canadian or American, probably American. So it is a huge, huge celebration. I loved that many people were very, embracing the lederhosen, and the women were in the dirndls. And you appreciate those types of traditions. We're talking, I Googled it, 1810. They've been doing that since 1810 or something like that.
Yeah.
And Munich is definitely one of my favorite European cities. Every time I've gone, it's been a really, really good time. We have a lot of friends there, obviously.
You got twice within 1 month, so good for you.
Yeah. So the second reason I was in Munich the second time in a month is because there was a small transportation leader summit in, I'm going to say this correctly, Tegernsee, which is about 30 miles. Yeah, 30 miles outside of Munich. And thank you to NIO who let me borrow a car to drive down there. So my wife you know my wife. She kind of did her own thing during the conference, but it's such a beautiful. So Tegernsee is a lake, and so it was at this lake. The hotel that we stayed at, resort hotel, is called Das Tegernsee, and that's what the conference is called. And so, one of the things that came from the conference was McKinsey had said subsidies, because people still point to that, Lei, are a 2 to 5% cost advantage. So it's nothing. The subsidies are nothing. So people need to stop. Yes. So people need to stop looking at that as a boogeyman. That didn't come from me. That came from, a third party, objective third party. So just get to work, legacy automakers, and again, you and I, we have had multiple passport stamps this year going to China. Go visit. Go rent a bunch of cars. Go to Mexico, rent a bunch of cars. Decide for yourself. Don't rely on people on X. Don't rely on people on social media who haven't been there, if you know what I mean, Lei.
So the message I piggyback on you, I want to give is I recently did the investor trip with Tech Bus China, where we visited 5 cities in 1 week and a bunch of companies. The simple thing for you to do is to really, like you said, come and see and talk to these people, experience, and then you get a sense of how they operate, what their culture is like, how they compete. And then a grain of salt, I tell every one of these investors, always a grain of salt of what they say, but at least what they say gives you a better perspective than what you hear on the news. That's the message, right? And then you can decide for yourself the good and the bad. And to be able to understand better. Right? So,
I think the message that I have to because I was on a panel in Michigan yesterday or 2 days ago talking about competitiveness and building globally competitive companies. Because it doesn't matter now how China got there. The fact of the matter is the end product is great. Okay? So the governments need to sort out the fairness part. The companies need to sort out building better products if you want to continue to be globally competitive, right? So I don't want to wade into what the governments need to do from a policy standpoint. What I do know is that the United States currently effectively doesn't allow Chinese EVs into the United States. That gives you time. What are you doing with that time? That's what I'm really, really focused on. Okay. Are you crying and whining about the unfairness, or are you back in the lab designing, manufacturing, or designing and engineering great products that you're going to launch in the next 12, 14 months? Now, GM and Ford has shown that they can do this through the Electra sub-brand, through the Bronco E-Rev, BEV. So they're capable of doing this, but they need to export that ingenuity, that speed to their home markets.
Well, yeah.
I'm jumping off my soapbox now, Lei.
Right, but the home markets just don't have the evolution that China has. Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's so they need to be self-motivated effectively, right? Yeah. Is what we're saying.
And which, we look at Tesla, what they did in Q2, right, a record high, but obviously there's the September push. I'm not sure if you made your decision yet on a new car or EV, but I think even China, Tesla is silently resilient all this time. I mean,
surprisingly.
Yeah, we have to see what Q4 is like, because now we've gone past that forward, right? This end of September, people trying to buy EV in the US to get the tax credit. How Q4 looks, because last year Q4 was also close to 500,000. Is it going to be a huge drop off? We don't know, but yeah, China is still strong for Tesla. We haven't seen the numbers, but it's Model YL.
Oh, goodness.
Oh.
I hope not, Jeffrey. I hope not. Yeah. So, first of all, I'm pretty much done. Let me look at the newsletter, Lei.
Yeah.
See. So we should also talk. So Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett sold out of his position entirely of BYD.
Yeah, we were.
What does that signal to you, Lei?
That to me just means Warren Buffett is on the growth game, and I think he probably feels that this growth in the past 17 years, we're not gonna see that in the next 17 years, at least not the same growth. I think that's always been his play. That's my understanding. I don't look at it as Buffett has exited all the shares in BYDs. What's going on? What's happening? He's a.
But he must be negative on BYD.
Yeah. So, I don't. I think there's other issues that BYD has to deal with. Just the investment, right? I think they got 3,800% return or something.
4,500.
4,500. Okay. And I think they move on. Right? You invest, you buy, you sell, and that was a good deal. That's all.
It was a great deal. Any hedge fund manager would die for those returns.
And that was Charlie Munger, right? Who pushed him into it. So
I don't know how or why Charlie knew to do this. It's amazing that he made such an early bet on BYD. Legends. That's why they're legends. And so I was interviewed by CNBC about that, and I said exactly that. I don't see this as a concern that Buffett had about BYD. I just look at it like 17 years is a long time to be holding a position in a company, and with a 4,500% return, I think he was pretty satisfied. And to your point, I also mentioned that moving forward, BYD is actually going to have a lot of competition. And so there's not likely going to be, and if they do have a 4,500% return, that's like game over for most automakers in the world in the next 15 years, isn't it? So, anyways.
Something to watch. I think, like I said, this year, the landscape is pretty much set, I think. But something to look forward to is whether BYD can come back stronger next year. Because guess what they're missing? They're missing the type of products that are eating into their market share. One great example is Leapmotor's 120,000 RMB, around that range with LiDAR. I think the C10 or the C11, into some of their BYD's compact vehicle sales. BYD is going to come back next year. So, but I think we're most likely done from the growth that they've shown. 21, 22, 23, 24. That's history.
Well, if we drill down a little bit more, Lei, we've seen most of that growth in China. Okay, so BYD hooked its wagon onto the growth of NEVs in China. And now phase 2 is we're in 100 markets. we continue to grow through our international expansion, through our manufacturing locally. Now, again, do we see 500,000 to 4.5 million in a 5-year period, that type of growth? Probably not. It's actually going to slow, but we always knew that it was going to slow. And I'm a bit surprised that that they're constrained, because I think their tool over the last few years was price cuts in China, and so now that they're not able to use that as freely as they have been in the past, this is where you see the Geely Xingyuan and the Cherys really step up Leapmotor vehicles. And one thing, so Augustine Friedel stopped by Detroit. He was at a conference in Ann Arbor, and I hosted him at New Lab. You've been to New Lab. So we were talking. I actually think that 2026 is going to get a bit more complicated for Chinese vehicles because, to your point, this LiDAR. Okay, how does that ship to Europe? Where's the data held? And is it able to go back to China, or does it have to stay in Europe? You know, these are the types of things, now that we have more and more of these vehicles going to be exported with these sensors, okay, that becomes likely, I won't say a hot button issue, but an issue that needs to be addressed as more and more enter Latin America, Europe, and other parts of the world. So,
yeah.
I don't have anything else, so we can go to, unless you do, we can go to questions and comments.
I mean, we can always talk forever, but time is constrained. It's too much to talk about. But we
So my man Riz, what's going on? Glad to have you guys join.
I was talking with Riz a bit about, he's planning to go back to China later. But
Jeffrey writes, go Detroit for now. Wonder what your thoughts are about Jim Farley continuing conversations in China, EVs in the future of Ford with the tariff.
He had another comment recently on China, right? Was that correct? About some of the things
I think
that
so, yeah.
For
Jeffrey also writes, Elon is not interested in making cars anymore. It's obvious. Go NIO.
Great to see you,
he
Jeffrey.
Also writes,
NIO Day.
Li Auto, F around and find out. It's the original fake OOO or Audi right there, right? So, and Jeffrey wants to remind you that Karen Mock and NIO. Karen Mock is an ambassador. Mike, the car geek,
one of my
right?
favorite singers, my wife's favorite singers. Oh,
how
by the way,
come almost?
It was great to kind of celebrate my birthday right after NIO Day.
Yeah, man! Happy birthday, dude!
That was a great experience.
Yeah, I had a birthday too recently, so we're getting old, Lei. We're getting old.
Happy birthday edition of China EVs.
And then shout out to Ethan Robertson, Wheels Boy, because he was getting interviewed and he basically said China EVs and More is one of the podcasts he listens to. So shout out to Ethan. Thanks for the plug. Mike, the car geek, how come almost no vehicles in the U.S. have a fridge? We invented drinking and eating in the car. I don't think people would leave the car, Mike, if they could have a fridge in it. I'm sure some of these large vans have fridges. I'm sure. Oh yeah, the Igloo, right? So, Jeffrey writes, Canada's Mark Carney would be very smart. Yeah, very smart to break away from Taco, Trump's EV agenda, and drop the tariffs and blocking China EVs. China speed.
You know why?
No one can match it. No one.
You know why the U.S. don't have fridges in the cars? Because it's so easy to get ice everywhere. Just going to a convenience store and buy a pack of ice and put it in the Igloo.
Yeah, we do have 7-Elevens all over the place, right?
Yeah.
F1, F2, F3, and one day F4 coming for NIO. The Western narrative is running very thin on subsidies and overcapacity on China EVs. If you're too lazy to go to China to see reality, then it's your fault. You're uninformed. You will not only be welcome, but also be taken out to lunch. Let me see. Charlie was a legend. Imagine all the mooncakes he got over the years. I think Jeffrey's talking about Charlie Munger getting mooncakes.
I brought back quite a lot of mooncakes.
Agenda, okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, so that's all I have. Oh, Jeffrey, thank you. And then he just wished me a happy birthday. So, anyways, everyone, as always, and many apologies. Lei and I were getting some passport stamps, traveling a little bit, but we're back, and we will hopefully be doing this almost every week and through the end of this year. So appreciate your continued viewing and following us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all next week.
All right.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at Lei Xing 77. That's LEIXING 77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.